keyboard to the boardroom. This is the Business of Esports. The worlds of gaming and esports are evolving every day faster than ever before. With YouGov's living data, you can probe into the real thoughts and behaviors of esports fans and gamers worldwide. If you're a team, a brand, an agency, or a rights holder, you should be talking with YouGov. They're partners with the biggest names in esports and the biggest brands all around the world, driving compelling results every single day. Check out yougov.com/BOE and schedule a call with YouGov today. From the keyboard to the boardroom, this is the Business of Esports weekly news show. I am Paul the Prophet Dawalibi. I'm joined today by my friends and co-hosts, and I've got a lot of them today. Joni Kraut, Lindsay the Boss Poss, Ben the Data from you, and Danielle Rourke. Danielle and Joni, you guys need, you're going to need nicknames if you're going to be here, right? We need to figure this out.
I was just thinking that. We're missing the little quotes.
I know.
If you're new here, if you're listening to this, welcome. What we do is we cover the most pressing gaming and esports topics and news of the week. We look at all of it through a business and C-suite lens. We dissect, we analyze the business implications of everything happening in this industry. And best of all, we get to do it with friends and lots of people who have all kinds of different thoughts and opinions. And this week we have a special YouGov Insights segment. This is just such a great episode. I'm so excited to have all of you. Paul, how is everyone doing this week?
That intro music, whoever did that for you, such a bop. Like every time, that's gonna be like my wake up alarm, and it'll set me off on a good day every day.
So I have a confession to make. I didn't know that the host could see everyone backstage for like a year of doing this, and I would always like dance to it in the background. And Paul was just sitting back there, seeing all the rest of his co-hosts dancing and not saying a word, because I know Jimmy and Jeff did too.
Jeff too. Jeff would air drum, thinking no one could see it, but I could see him every time. It was very good. He's an excellent air drummer.
It's a jam.
But we have some special guests this week. Ben, you've been here a few times. People know you, and we're going to talk about some amazing YouGov data. But Joni and Danielle would love a little bit, just the 1 minute intros on yourselves, and tell our audience and the people listening to this what you guys do.
Joni, go ahead.
Okay. Hi. So I'm Joni. I'm the CEO at Women in Games International. We are a nonprofit. We're focused on getting more diversity in esports and gaming. So we focus on everything from tabletop to video game to esports. And we have over 90 programs, workshops, panels, and initiatives really focused on empowering women, non-binary, femme-identifying people to get into the professional side of the games industry.
And I am Danielle Rourke. I'm a senior higher education strategist at Dell Technologies. Our education strategy team really helps educational institutions understand how they can use new technologies better for the betterment of research, for educating students, all of that. And I'm a huge geek. And so love the fact that I also get to work with schools about esports programs and how that can actually help students on career pathways and building out futures in the industry.
Very cool. And I know we are going to talk about women in gaming stuff. Ben, you brought some amazing insights from YouGov around women in gaming, which I think will be fun to go through in a little bit. But people, stick around. We're going to get to that. We've got some news to cover. Johan says hi, everyone. Hi, Johan. Welcome. We're going to get to that. Let's start, though, with some news this week, guys. I want to cover some news. There's some big news in the gaming and esports world this week that I think would be fun to touch on with all of you. And the headline on the first one here is maybe surprising given where sort of the gaming industry has gone. And, we're going to tie it back. I'm going to tie this back, Ben, to some of the insights you brought later. But EA is in the news, and not necessarily in a good way. They've announced that they're giving up on Apex Legends and Battlefield mobile games. So Apex Legends Mobile is going to shut down in May. This is the headline from Polygon.com. Basically, they're throwing in the towel on these two big mobile sort of products, these two big mobile games after less than a year. So Apex Legends Mobile is less than a year old. They say, according to the quote here, Respawn says, it remains excited about mobile as a platform and look forward to new opportunities to serve players there in the future. They said, according to their decision to end the mobile version of Battlefield, as the industry
Hey, Paul, we're getting some audio trouble on you.
Oh no, he's frozen. Okay, cool. This has happened before, and what we all basically just do is party in his absence. I mean, we can just kick off the discussion about Apex shutting down. I would love to get, Danielle, your thoughts on that, because I know you're kind of an FPS game player at times. So what do you think about the mobile space?
Yeah, I will admit, like, I am not great at FPS. But the thing that strikes me about this is that I'm concerned, I'm worried that it's cutting out particular demographics of people, like perhaps people that can't afford the consoles, that can't afford the gaming PCs. That's where, especially in the education field, that's where we've seen a lot of students and kids, that they have a cell phone quite often. And so they can actually stay in gaming with their friends, especially for cross-platform titles. So this worries me just a little bit. But hopefully the statement at the end is true, that they're not giving up on mobile. It's perhaps just this title.
Yeah. I think I've always kind of thought that the mobile space seemed a little still early in America. And I'd be curious to see behind the screen of like EA's presence in APAC regions or South America, like were they making a dent there or not? And if they didn't get the support and the audience in those spaces, it makes sense that they're not kind of doubling down to I kind of see those as like a tell, right, of like the tipping point, and then they could still invest more and get that tipping point in North America, but maybe they weren't seeing it.
Man, you all are kind of jumping in with like real insights. I just think that this sucks. This makes me sad. I was someone who really championed this because I thought it would be great as a mobile play. And I know like so many people who play Apex, and most of them are PC players. I thought that this was such a good transition in between. We just talked about it as we just had a story about it being like popular or something. I can't quite remember what the story was, but it was largely positive. And so to have that followed with this just makes me sad. And I think it's an unfortunate kind of trend in the industry that we're seeing like so many things being shut down, so many people being let go, so much less creativity and fun and innovation. And so this just sucks.
Guys, I was saying, you can hopefully hear me now and see me. The trend in the industry has been towards more mobile, right? More investment in more mobile, more focus on mobile, more mobile players. PUBG Mobile has been a runaway success. Call of Duty Mobile has been, for the most part, at least by the number of players, at least a big success. Why do you think EA would sort of give up here? Do you think it's because they decided they can't compete against those two franchises? Like, what is the and maybe more appropriately, because I've seen some of the slides from Ben here on mobile sort of gaming usage, are women sort of players most affected by something like this? Just because, and I'm sorry, Ben, to jump ahead here, but you're going to see some of the stats around mobile gaming. It trends more with female players versus male players, and so what are the repercussions here of shutting down beyond Danielle's great point, which is accessibility. What are the broader repercussions?
We're seeing a huge shift at Wiki right now, with our outreach and with different organizations that we're working with. And there's kind of this impending apocalyptic mindset within the games industry. And so a lot of companies are downsizing. They're downsizing everything from staff to different budgets. And so they're cutting the cost of staff, they're cutting the cost of travel budgets, and unfortunately they are cutting a lot of DEI budgets as well. And so it's really kind of been affecting specifically my space for sure, being a nonprofit in the DEI world. So one of the biggest things we're watching them cut though is games. Even if they're doing okay, the games that aren't doing as well as their other games. So it could even just be that they're not pulling in as much money, or they're not seeing the projection continuing to move in the direction that they want versus other opportunities that they have. They might just be putting more money and more investment into another space that they believe in. So it could actually be that they're looking to make a big investment in a different direction, and they're using the money that they had been putting into this to shift into a different kind of pipeline.
Danielle sent a great article here in the background, which I was going to mention also, but EA stock did plunge on this news, right? So clearly shareholders are not terribly happy with the decision, which is probably not surprising, again, because everything in the industry has been moving towards more mobile. Let me play the devil's advocate here, because most of people who watch this know I'm not the biggest mobile gaming fan. Does this mean maybe we get better games out of EA in the long run, though? That maybe resources are freed up. We finally get that Star Wars game that was supposed to come out last year. Does this mean, I'm trying to find a silver lining here. Does this mean we get something good out of this? Or is this really, in your minds, just cost cutting?
I don't think that those two things are related, unfortunately for you. No, I think that this is more of a sign of kind of like exactly what Joni's talking about, and kind of the industry is like a little turtle going back into its shell right now, which I don't think is good news for game development across any front, mobile or otherwise, unfortunately. So I wish that I could say yes, there'll be more resources, but I think like layoffs and all kinds of shifts in strategies have just shown that no, I don't think that's going to happen.
By the way, I just want to get caught up here. Freddie says, what a group. And Johan says, unfortunately, I think Apex Mobile's failure is due to EA's failure to market efficiently in markets that drive mobile gaming where other FPS mobile titles have succeeded. I mean, that...
Oh no, he strikes again. You never know when it's coming.
I think Paul's just turning into a robot. Like, yeah. I think that's all it is.
Chat GPT is hosting this show. But Danielle, you're going to say something before that.
I was just going to say that it's interesting to consider the fact that, the Star Wars title is on the table for EA. We're seeing a lot of, shifts within the industry as a result of a lot of those cost cutting measures, I think, Lindsay, that you were talking about, especially around, like Square Enix to Tencent, and then Tencent maybe to Amazon. And, it's like these big, well-known properties are being kind of moved and shuffled around among the big players in the industry. And I think it'll be really interesting to see how all that shakes out. And it makes me wonder if is that something that EA is looking towards, is, rather than our own kind of homegrown property, are we going to look towards some of those more established IPs and try to put all of our chips there?
I mean, Joni, I'd love to hear what you have to say about that. You play games. Tell me what you think.
Yeah, we were seeing a really big shift that was very exciting, and it was to go back to in-person events. And so the start of 2022, we were very hopeful that we were going to be back in, huge conferences and opportunities to kind of gather and be together. Sort of mid 2022, we were pretty optimistic. We had a couple of larger conferences on international scales, and we did a lot of Get in the Game programs for Wiggy, where we were actually bringing people to conferences to kind of get back into the swing of things. And everything from Gamescom in Germany to Paris Games Week, and we were sort of seeing people coming back. And so I guess there was that shift of putting money back into kind of creating those experiences. Mobile seemed to be right in that same space of, you're going to be getting up and leaving your console. You're going to be getting up and moving and traveling and playing games on a airplane or playing games on a commute. And so it seems like a lot of investment and a lot of energy was put into the mobile space at that time. And now it's interesting to kind of see the shift away from that. And it seems like it's at around the same time that we're starting to kind of cut those travel budgets again. So I'm not sure if that corresponds with each other or not, but I'm kind of getting nervous that we're going to see the decrease in in-person events again too.
That would be a bummer. I mean, I think it's important to remember that, EA also has a lot of other very successful mobile titles, like Bejeweled, and I think Plants vs. Zombies is them too. So I think maybe to a point that Paul raised, the mobile FPS space being very competitive right now could have kind of driven this decision. And with titles like that, I think there's also just like infrastructure challenges to having a really good mass player fast action game on mobile like FPS demands. And so I just could see it be hate to see them cut great IPs from a burgeoning platform. I think it's also, wouldn't be surprised if a year from now the landscape changes and they revive it again, but hopefully not before that Star Wars game that Paul's been looking forward to.
Yeah, Paul was done with that comment. He's like, no, they better keep the Star Wars. Better. I'm also on that board, but
Hopefully this is better, guys. Hopefully you can hear me and see me now. Sorry, I want to connect this to another story I saw this week, which was Phil Spencer in the news talking about the game industry, obviously, as he does. But he mentioned specifically that he felt this year was too light on games. This is what he was quoted as saying, basically, that according to him, he says he took the blame for some of the results at Xbox, obviously, which were less than what they were expecting. They came in less than the year before. He says, our commitment to our fans is that we need to have a steady release of great games that people can play on our platform. And we didn't do enough of that in 2022. There's no doubt. And fundamentally, that's on me. I'm the head of the business. Starfield, Redfall, these are games that have all been delayed, obviously. But I'm curious if you think, we see EA removing games, and then on the other hand, you have Phil Spencer saying we didn't put out enough games. Is this part of the problem? Like, is this the same problem, I guess? Is Phil Spencer saying we're not putting out enough content, and this is why Apex they shut down Apex Mobile, right? They just couldn't put out enough content around it. I'm curious what you make of Phil's comments here. And do you see this as a big problem in the industry going forward? Do you think 2023 will be a tough year for games also?
I'm happy to start. I'm going to once again bring up that I am going to dunk on the Marvel Cinematic Universe for making everything ever unoriginal content that is supposed to be stretched out over 30 years with all the same people recycled into different stories. So I think that gaming has had kind of this problem for a couple years now. And I do genuinely think a lot of that came from COVID. So many companies were changing strategy, growing faster than they expected, contracting in different ways than they expected. There's supply chain issues. Like, there was no real time for creativity and energy and effort into new games when the whole world was just kind of in this massive upheaval. But I do think that 2022 was the first chance that we kind of had to get out of that. And I don't know that I saw a ton of progress in the innovation creativity space before we had kind of this next round of global issues with the gaming industry. So it's felt kind of like that original thought, original content, new game, like energy, fire, passion has been continuously bumped down the priority list in favor of other things. And now we're starting to see like actual backlash from that. Like, oh, hey, we're actually tired of everyone recycling the same stuff and like not putting out new original content and like doing all these things. And our mobile games aren't doing as well as we thought they would. And it's kind of, that's a really, really big diagnosis that I don't necessarily think rings true in every individual case. But I do feel like people are getting so fed up with the lack of creativity in game releases, finally. And like now we're seeing even the people, Phil Spencer's a huge name, even the people at the top of the food chain saying, okay, guys, we're really tired of not having fresh meat here. So that's kind of a overall trend that I'm seeing, but it's not necessarily applicable in every case. But I think generally that could be an issue.
So you think it's a lagging indicator here, would be, right?
Mm-hmm. Go ahead,
Danielle. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're great. I have a couple of thoughts about this one. In the first one being exactly what Lindsay was kind of speaking towards. Like there were so many changes in almost every industry, but especially the game industry in approach. There were so many stories about the bad crunch that was happening and everything. So I feel like there was a lot of culture shifting happening at some of the big gaming companies. And it's incredibly difficult for even the best artists and programmers and employees, and just in general, to be super creative and productive when you've got all of this culture shift happening around you. Much less what's going on in the macroeconomic world with everything else. So I feel like there's a little bit of grace that should probably be given to all of the people that work in the game industry for perhaps, maybe there wasn't as much new content as everybody would have wanted, but let's all look in our own lives too. I did not get all of my pandemic goals completed either. So, but I also, Paul, one of the things that we said, I think the last time that I was on here as well, is there's so much pressure to make these huge games, these 200, 300 hour games that are these epics, just truly epics, in order to get price for value and to be the longest game and things like that. I think so much of that has maybe even crowded out some of the independent game producers or publishers or developers or studios. I think that's my one wish, is that some of the bigger industry players like Blizzard, like Microsoft, like Tencent, all of them would give a little bit more of their focus to some of those independent game developers, and showcase them a little bit more, as opposed to only showcasing the big 200, 300 hour epics. And we probably would get more content then.
That's what I was going to say too. I think 2022 was less of a focus on the AAA studios, and it was really like the year of the indie. And I couldn't tell you how many different companies reached out to ask me to come be a judge on a gaming. Here's 20 games that were created from diverse people from whatever industry, if it was mobile games or PC games, or and let's judge them and kind of have like this opportunity to get these other people highlighted. And so it was, you said like a culture shift. I completely agree with that. I think there was also like a concept shift, and we're seeing that a lot with everything from Netflix gaming and kind of reaching out to find other studios to help generate these games, to Google Play, where you can just sort of upload a game like you can upload a YouTube video. And there's this opportunity to kind of get these games out there in more of like a Kickstarter kind of vibe, to see, do you like my game? And then maybe I can invest more time and interest into it to continue to develop it and sort of put more content into it. So I think there was maybe less of those, like those epic games like you were talking about, but I saw a lot more of those kind of smaller bite-sized games, and those opportunities to get more new developers in that spotlight for sure.
Yeah, I think Phil, though, is saying something that, and I want to put my sort of Paul the gamer hat on, right? And complain a bit, or at least agree with Phil from a gaming standpoint. I feel like, and this is anecdotal, but I feel like the industry has not produced many great games in a while. Like, I think the last couple of years have been maybe some of the worst years of my gaming lifetime when it comes to sort of what is out there. And I don't know if that's just my singular perspective and it's not the reality. I don't know if it's because there's a lot of money chasing like Web3 gaming and things like that. So you're seeing less, fewer studios produce, call it more traditional games. I don't know if it's COVID and, the change, like Danielle said, the change in culture and change in sort of environment. I'm not sure what the causes are, but I'm also not convinced that my feeling is totally sort of out there, right? Because I see Phil Spencer say something like this, and I sort of see the wink, and it's like, hey, this is code for we agree we haven't made a lot of good games in a while. We'll do better. Now, the other interesting piece is the article mentions Game Pass, and I'm curious if you guys think, does Game Pass make an Xbox or a Microsoft or eventually Activision Blizzard, which will all be under the same roof, does it make them lazier? Like, do you feel like they have to put out fewer good games because you have people locked into a $10 a month subscription that maybe they don't even think about? In the same way, it's like if there's something good on Netflix this week, great. If there's not, I don't run out to cancel my subscription. But curious your thoughts on that.
Go ahead, Jenny.
Well, I said a lot there to tackle any of it.
Oh my gosh. I think you have more of like, how many people do you now have to get approval from before you can move forward with a game, before you can do something with your game? How many different brains do you have to get that go ahead and that budget and that extra piece from? I don't know if it's necessarily lazy. I'm wondering if it's more bureaucracy, if I could say that word, and creating this cohesive brand and maintaining that structure around what can a game look like, what should a game look like, and having so many kind of hats at that table. I like to think that that's going to be my optimistic goal of, no, they're not lazy. They really want to. They're getting stopped. So you can't change my mind.
I'm kind of at two different points rattling around my head. I mean, the first is, how much has the expectation of the gaming consumer changed? Like, are we just jaded? Like, are we just used to games being of a certain caliber, and we've seen so many different things and we've enjoyed them, and they were wow, amazing the first time, the second time, maybe the third time, but now like it really takes something that's just way different or experimental to get a lot of attention and then make money. But then the publishers aren't really incentivized, to one of Joni's points, in taking those risks. Like, if they know that they can create, a sequel of something that was successful before and can make it kind of repeatable action that is going to draw in a big audience, it's going to stay there for a long time. Like, it's kind of a double-edged sword. They're not really incentivized to create new titles if it's going to take them away from a title that's working for them still.
But Ben, this is why I wanted to tie this to the Apex story, the Apex mobile story, because it sort of feels like at some point the pendulum swings the other way, right? And maybe now, like, this is eye-opening when you have an IP like Apex, which is AAA as it gets. You have a publisher like EA, as AAA as it gets. Mobile platform, which is as popular and growing as fast as any other, right? And still they're shutting it down, which arguably we'll call that a failure. If that can fail, is it sort of a moment where you go, well, you can't really phone it in anymore. We can't just take something, slap mobile on, like put it on a phone and call it a day, right? Like, it just, you can't take these shortcuts anymore. The gaming audience has become maybe more discerning, have higher expectations. You use the word jaded. I actually think that's a good word here. We've sort of seen it all. Like, does the pendulum swing back now, right? Do gamers not revolt, but do we see a bit of a pushback, and maybe the efforts that are sort of phoned in don't see the success they might have a few years ago?
Well, I think the winner there is indies, to Joni's point too. Like, I think if we, you think about, like, what does that mean for the pendulum to swing? I think that's where it goes. And then it forces, the AAA publishers to take more risk and experiment, or pick up some of those indie shops and give them opportunity. Let's just hope that they do it in an equitable way, is always the challenge, right? And I don't know if, like, one of my favorite games of the year was, well, actually, I just watched my girlfriend play it, but it was Stray. It was that indie game with the cat. Like, I'm sorry if I brought it up last time I was on the show, but that game was so fun.
And then can I interrupt you and say, not only do I love that she was playing Stray, but that you specifically called out, I was watching my girlfriend play, because that legitimately does happen. And I think people need to hear that.
Yeah, I'm a professional backseat gamer, so I also love Stray.
Yeah, well, she enjoys watching me play Elden Ring and Spider-Man, but this time she took the controller and I sat there for a majority of it, and it was great. So anyway, I guess I didn't mean to make that point, but thanks, Danielle. Yeah, she's like getting back into gaming, maybe for spending too much time with me, which is good. But yeah, I think bringing it full circle to Joni's point earlier, like I think 2023 is another big opportunity year for indies, because I think gamers are hungry for new things.
Ben, this is a perfect segue to these YouGov insights around female gamers and female esports fans. So I'm going to bring this up. I'm going to let you drive a bit here, but I think there's some great stuff here. You tell me what you want to focus on. Obviously, some big stats here right up front, big numbers.
Yeah, so we like to start with a big funnel, and then we'll kind of drill in a little bit. So I don't think these are big numbers, but I don't think will come as any big surprise. So this whole analysis is pulled from YouGov's profiling tool. And we're looking at female gamers defined as playing at least an hour a week on any device. So that does include mobile gamers. And then we also look at esports fans specifically. So people, women in America say that they are at least somewhat interested or in esports, or it's one of their very top interests. So this is cut down from what was a larger report, and it's totally free. So if anyone is interested, just hit me up. I'm happy to share. So you can scroll down here, Paul.
These are demographics, right?
Yeah. So just starts with some demographics here. We see that a third of them are 18 to 34. I think maybe some would be surprised by this, but I don't think anyone on this panel. There's the big mobile gaming cohort, which is predominantly women, and tends to be older women too. So that's driving a lot of this kind of age breakout here. We see that they
just
have.
I understand that's a larger percentage than you would see on the male side.
For 18 to 34s.
Yes.
It's yes, I believe that is what it is saying.
The average female gamer trends younger than
male gamers when we're looking at it across all platforms. Yep. And then we see kind of their education level. They do, according to this data, again, it's a very broad audience here, but they do under index a bit for higher education. I think if we look at this as a more filtered audience, that story changes. And the same with income. So I don't want to get too lost in the demographics here, because we are talking about such a broad audience, and we can drill in deeper. Where I think it's more interesting.
This is where I thought it got really interesting, and what I was referring to at the beginning of the show around the mobile gaming penetration.
Exactly. Yeah, totally. So we see first kind of gaming devices used, and this question is specific to PC or console. So we see that there's only a third who are mobile only, but 81%, as we see just up there to the right, do also play mobile games. So there's an overlap of about 50%, a little bit less, 45% of female gamers who are playing on mobile and PC or console as well. They say, sorry if you guys hear the sirens, the joys of living in New York. They are pretty in line with male gamers on gaming to relax and wind down. All right, they passed. We see that they over-index for identifying as casual gamers. So I think this is very in line with the mobile gaming trend as well. So it's not necessarily one of their top interests, but it's something they do. They like video games. They are slightly less likely to have bought 3 or more games in the last 6 months compared to men. 21% say they're gaming out of habit. So that's more often than male gamers. I think, again, it goes back to that kind of casual mobile player. So it's that, the commute player, or, passing the time or passively playing a game while you're also watching TV, which is the thing we all do too on our phones, right? And then they're not necessarily finding out about games from gaming websites as much as the male gamer cohort. So begs the question, where are they finding games? And I think the data not shown here is it's the App Store. Going for the mobile gamers, it's a lot of like what's the most popular, and then down the list is through friends.
I'm just curious. I want to bring Joni, Danielle, Lindsay. Any thoughts on these? Any numbers here that surprise you?
So I wanted to comment on the 59% of women that identify, or female identifying, that also identify as a casual gamer, that they like video games, but they're not one of the top interests. Something that we see from the kind of K-20 crowd, or the education side of players who identify as female, is that very often they will not identify themselves as competitive players. They will not consider themselves to be professional players, even if they've competed in tournaments, even if they, can beat the socks off of their, brothers or cousins or nephews or whatever. They don't see themselves as anything other than a casual gamer. And I think it's just an interesting data point as you're looking at some of these responses, to think of it from kind of that psychological, sociological point of view, that we oftentimes don't see female identifying gamers rank themselves as serious as we often see male identifying gamers.
Interesting.
That's right.
Yeah. I was
Sorry,
just
go ahead.
That's fine. That was one thing. One of the big inclusion points when I host the podcast is pointing out that I've met so many women who are, I'm not a gamer. I just play Animal Crossing on my Switch, and I play this on my phone. And sometimes I pick up the Xbox to do this. I'm like, you're a gamer. So yeah, I can totally understand what Danielle is saying. It's like people, a lot of, particularly women, but people in general, think if they're not sitting down at a PC playing FPSs, that they're not a gamer.
We definitely saw a huge shift in that too, as phone companies and even just the way computers started to kind of categorize things. And so now there's like the gaming piece where it'll actually pull in solitaire as a game, and people are starting to see like, oh, I play solitaire. I guess, these puzzle games actually are games. I am a gamer. I am playing these games. And so it's been interesting also kind of from the professional side, where we're trying to get more women in the games industry as professionals. They're starting to see some of these things that they do, and these pastime activities as games and as opportunities to have jobs within these spaces. So I think having those categorizations of what is a game has really kind of helped define more people as being gamers. So these numbers just kind of keep increasing with that.
Yeah. And to that point, it should be noted, all this is 18 plus. So, we're not even including teens in here. And that cohort, is obviously gaming is more popular among all of them, girls included. So we'll see this, I think, evolve a lot over the next 5 years and on.
This is something. This is not my thought, but this is something I can't even remember who told me. Lindsay, it may have been you at some point, but I don't know who told me this at some point. But the female gaming numbers really are going to hit a massive inflection point, just on the basis of gaming being a more accepted hobby. As a young girl, right? As an 8-year-old or a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old, the more that starts feeling accepted, the more they identify as like these numbers essentially explode, because you get this whole generation that now grows up with it as a hobby that they're not discouraged from taking up. And so it'll be interesting to see how these numbers change over time too, right, Ben? Like it's not a static thing.
Absolutely.
Sorry, go ahead. I cut you off on this. The gaming genres around female gamers.
Oh, no, all good. So we just look at the top 5 genres. I think this, again, kind of just is right on the nose with what we were just saying. They tend to over-index in some of these kind of casual and puzzle and word type games, and some may not look at that and say, that makes me a gamer or identify as a gamer. But if you're playing games, you're a gamer. So I mean, something that as we're talking through this, something that it'd be interesting to look at, going back to the data itself, is we have a statement in here that asks people specifically, I see myself as a gamer. And 40% of this female audience, only 40%, agree with that statement. So if we had maybe added that as our audience filter, I'm sure that the genres and the time spent, these other things would look a bit different. Actually, maybe dramatically different. And then these are some top franchises. This is in the YouGov survey, so we don't track the thousands of video game titles that are out there. There's about 60 that we ask, but these were the top 10 that rose to the top in terms of satisfaction and impression of the game.
I love that GTA is so high up there.
That stood out to me too.
It surprised me a little bit, honestly. I was like, Super Mario and GTA, those were the two that surprised me on this list, because, Ben, this is specifically the top franchises with positive impressions and satisfaction for female identifying gamers, right?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, I was just a little bit surprised at those two, although I know that GTA is rumored to have a female protagonist coming up.
That is the rumor.
Those are the rumors.
But it shows the power of also Nintendo, right? Like two of the top 3 Nintendo franchises. I don't think you can discount that. Just how good, how universally appealing their games are, which I think is interesting. Sorry, Ben, go ahead on this one. This is time spent gaming and streaming.
Yeah, so now we're drilling a bit to the kind of the device, by device conversation we were having a minute ago. So we see that, again, not surprising, the data shows it again here, a lot hedging towards mobile and handheld play. So there's, anyone, let's see, is it 85% who are playing for at least an hour a week on mobile device specifically. And then we see, almost half who are watching gaming video streams, and a majority of those are the largest percent of those are doing it on Twitch and YouTube gaming. Again, not surprising there. I like that, or I think it's interesting that, there's another half of this audience who are playing on any device. They're playing over 7 hours per week of video games.
Interesting. Is anyone surprised by these numbers on the watching the gaming streams? And the reason I ask is anecdotally, I feel like you find a lot more women watching content in Discord servers than you see in Twitch chat, but maybe they're just not as active in Twitch chat.
Maybe there are better mods in Discord servers than there are
True.
on Twitch chat.
Also true.
Yeah, I don't know that I've noticed that, but I feel like a lot of my friends and stuff are definitely more like lurkers than active in chat for sure. So I wonder if that's why.
Ben, you want to do one more here? Which one?
Yeah.
Or a couple more?
Let's see. No, we can keep it quick. Go to all right, go to the esports one. Yeah. So this, now we're focusing on just esports fans. And again, I think there's nothing here that's gonna like ooh and ah, but I think it's nice to see data kind of validate your expectations. So very much stronger gamer identity among the esports audience. There are less mobile only gamers. So we see 80%, so close to that, who are playing on PC or console. And they're spending more time gaming per week. And they're buying more games, in general as well. So, I think, again, not surprising, esports fandom takes you kind of that next level. From a esports team perspective, the kind of insights they're looking at a lot are, what are the the items, the brands that their fans are in market for. So we look at some kind of in-market trends of this audience in terms of their just broader consumer behaviors. And then
I mean,
if
that's
we go,
interesting because I don't think there's nearly enough brands in these categories, these top 5 or 6 categories, messaging female esports fans specifically. It feels like this is massively underserved in these categories. I don't know, Joni, Danielle, Lindsay, do you guys agree?
I would agree just from my own anecdotal experience. Like groceries, I've seen Ninja on Takis. I've seen some of the other Overwatch players on Cheez-It boxes, but I've not yet seen a female esports player on any of those.
Mm-hmm.
True. Interesting.
We tend to see mostly women in gaming on makeup as well. So it would be kind of nice to branch into other things for sure.
Yeah, this harkens back to the Logitech making the pink keyboard and calling it a thing for girl gamers debate, which was still horrendous. Like, there's so much opportunity there, and you can do so many things. Don't do the dumb thing.
Exactly. If you want to make a keyboard and a mouse for girl gamers, make it smaller or make the keys differently arranged, or something that actually makes sense to market it towards a female as opposed to just it's pink.
I made that comment when we did that story, Lindsay, which is like, and the mice were like heavy and like they were worse performing than their normal mice, which made no sense to me. It's like,
and more expensive.
Yeah, and they were more expensive. It's like, we know you don't care about performance. You just want it to be pink, as if that was like the conclusion they all came to. They needed some YouGov insights here.
Yeah,
last one, Ben. Here.
Yeah, last one. I just want to call out here that a third of esports fans also say that they're playing games competitively. So there's again super engaged audience, and they need more of a voice. They need more presence. So appreciate Joni and Danielle doing all and many others out there doing what they can.
Make one comment on this slide, a number that seems incredibly high to me. 14% of female esports fans also coach.
That's what the data says. Yeah.
That's interesting.
I have a theory behind that. And again, it's just based on the work that I've done with educational institutions and especially collegiate. But I know multiple females who are either student coaches or are like lead coaches hired by the universities that are very passionate about the world of gaming, about the world of esports. They love doing it. But again, there's potentially some of that societal rebuke about, being a player, or perhaps they just don't want the harassment that is involved a lot of the times in the lobbies or in the games. And so oftentimes we do see female students and female, people involved in the education industry, at least, that will be the marketer, that will be the coach, that will be the team lead, that will be, all kinds of different roles. They just don't necessarily want to be the athlete.
We see that a lot too. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Joni.
We see that a lot. We see a lot more women-only tournaments popping up as well. And so we have this interest and we have this even sponsorship behind it. So there's prize money. And so there's a team, there's a group of women who want to compete and they just need a coach. And so we have a lot of women stepping up to be those coaches, a lot of ex-pro players stepping up to say, I want to help see this change and bring this change to the industry. And so they will step up and actually be a coach. I actually would agree with that stat. I'm surprised it's as low as it is, because I think there's a lot of women stepping up to be that coach just to make sure that they can help drive that change and have those conversations and create that visibility for the women who are in the industry and showing that interest for sure.
I think it's fascinating. And Ben, I'd love at some point if we could dig it up, because I would bet that over indexes against men, right? That men have a considerably smaller percentage who also say they coach competitive gaming among male esports fans. I think it's a very interesting set and very interesting insight, Danielle and Joni, in terms of why. Makes sense to me now. I thought it was crazy, but it makes sense to me now. All right, I want to do one last news story here before we wrap up. And by the way, reach out to Ben Perro on LinkedIn if you want to get access to this full study. I think we are going to post it, Ben, But everyone should go to also check out yougov.com/BOE, where there's a bunch of other free reports, free information, previous YouGov Insight segments just like this, where we break down some of the data from YouGov. They're always a lot of fun. Sorry, Ben.
I
go ahead.
appreciate that. Now I was gonna say, and like Danielle and Joni, let's collaborate on an update. Like there's so much data we're sitting on, and there's the story that you pull out of it is informed by the perspective that goes into it. So would love to expand on that with your help.
Yeah,
Can
absolutely.
I selfishly say what I'd love to see from all three of you or all four of you? Everyone knows I live in Dubai now. What most people don't know is Saudi Arabia, about almost 50%, 45% of all the gamers in Saudi Arabia are women. It is an extremely high penetration of female gamers in a place where it's not often talked about. It's even less talked about than you would see in North America. And I'd love to see some of the insight around female gaming. I don't even know if it's possible, but in this part of the world, sort of what's the same data that we had here around US female gamers, but what the picture looks like here and where the opportunities are here. I think that's also exciting. I think there's a huge opportunity in a massively underserved segment of the market in this part of the world, where you still have a lot of women playing games. They're just they're playing the same games and they're playing them a lot. It's just much less talked about.
Well, and Paul, I have a question for you actually on that.
Yeah.
I've been seeing the articles and the headlines around Saudi Arabia making so much of an investment, both monetarily and resource-wise, in gaming, in esports. Are you seeing some of those dollars go towards, helping to kind of promote female identifying gamers in that country even?
For sure. There are, esports orgs that are fielding teams. There are, some of the LAN centers that are being built in Saudi Arabia have, facilities specifically for female gamers where they can go and play with their friends and be comfortable. It's still a society where men and women are often separated. And so having separate, in the same way there are gyms that have separate, areas for women to be able to go and be with their friends and feel safe and play. So I have seen some of that. I think we will see more of it. And part of the challenge is there's not enough good data to be able to prove in some of these conversations to say, hey, this is a market you need to be thinking about and a market you need to be going after, because there's an assumption that's made based on stereotypes and things like that are incorrect, right? Some of the data proves that it's incorrect, but this is the hurdle people are fighting, right? Like, if we're going to invest, prove to me that it's a worthwhile investment, which is probably a challenge in North America as well, but even more so here. So are the majority of the billions of dollars being spent there going specifically to female gamers? No. But I think as they build out more of an ecosystem there, the female gamers aren't being left behind. Let's put it that way. They're not being excluded, which I think is a very big positive. And I have seen initiatives, especially on the esports org side, where there are orgs in the area that are fielding female-only teams. I mean, I'll give you a perfect example. I'm speaking at an event in Dubai on this week, and there's a female esports pro who's one of the more famous ones, Madiha Naz, on my panel, right? Who's well known in the region, and I host a show on CNBC here. One of the guests I have coming up is Noor Stars, who has like 20 million followers on YouTube. She has like 13 million on Instagram. Like, she's a mega star. People don't know her in the West, but in terms of a gaming influencer, even by Western standards, she's massive and female in a region, again, where you wouldn't think, but she's probably the biggest gaming influencer in the Middle East, period, male or female.
We actually have a handful of participants on our upcoming mentorship program from Saudi because there is that interest. But like you were saying, there's that separation. And so when you're looking for a mentor and you're looking for professional guidance and professional experience, there's not as many women in the games industry on the professional side in Saudi. And so we have this virtual opportunity to join for mentorship from women all over the world. And so it's a really cool opportunity to get that mentorship, show those experiences, and show women who are succeeding in the games industry on the professional side. So we have these women reaching out to us saying, I want this. I just need to see how to get there myself. And I would love to meet with somebody who's been there. And there's not that in my region right now. So it's really important to us when we do, like our Get in the Game program in Gamescom in Singapore as well. It's creating those opportunities to network with people within your specific geographic regions because you're looking for a job within your geographic region. So it's a really great opportunity to kind of continue to learn and have those conversations for sure.
Yeah, and I think it's such a great initiative, Johnny. And you're right. This is what the region needs, right? I think you need the ability to look at someone who's already done it and feel like you can follow in their footsteps. That has such a huge impact. And we're starting to see it. Look, this was not the story I wanted to do, but I brought it up anyways. I mean, they're spending a lot of money to bring esports. It's one of the few places in the world right now where we're still seeing a lot of money being spent in esports with this huge prize pool. But since we talked about it, let me do this story. This is Gamers 8, which is going to be their 8-week festival this year. They did it last year. It was a huge success. The reason I wanted to bring this up is, do you think that the prize pools matter at this point? Because we've had this discussion before. Is there a point at which the prize pool no longer has an impact, right? Like, would 10 million have been enough here? You really need to give away 30 million. At some point, it's a lot of money, no matter what, right? And it's going to attract top gamers from around the world, top esports pros from around the world. Is there a limit to where these prize pools should go? Or do you think this is just great for the industry? The bigger the number, the better. Lindsay?
The only time sorry, did you say something?
No, go.
The only time it bothers me is when it's a smaller number for the women's tournament. That's the only time that the number bothers me. You want to throw as much money out at these as you want, go for it. Have fun. That's amazing. But when it's 5,000 for a women's tournament and then it's $1 million for the male tournament of the exact same thing in the exact same region hosted by the exact same company, that's when it becomes frustrating to me. But I don't know. I think it's exciting. If you can afford it, go ahead. I think there's a cooler opportunity to have multiple of them so that there's more, creating more opportunities. But no, I would never be like, that's too much money. I would never. I don't think anybody who wins that tournament either would be like, I don't know if I should accept all this. So
that's such a funny way of putting it. I definitely think you're right, Joni, in that if you have the money to spend, I'd rather you spend it on gaming than something else, provided that it's, everyone can have kind of the same chance at it. But Paul, to your point, like, why not 10 million instead of 30? I do kind of agree with that because I would rather see more money going into hosting more events, paying more shoutcasters. I mean, even just like making better merchandise or like offering free drinks. Like, there's, ways to get people engaged. I think that the prize pools do sort of cap out, particularly for a game like Fortnite. They could just get egregious to a point where it's like, you could make this a more engaging experience. You could bring more people in. You could give more people a paycheck for that same amount. You could host more events. You could go to more areas. Like, there's an opportunity cost there that's very real when you're only considering adding to a prize pool. And I don't think a prize pool has the same power that it had 3 years ago. We used to all get so excited at these numbers, and now it's kind of like, oh, good, another one, So they've lost their shininess. Like, the big number has lost its shininess in terms of any type of engagement or fan interaction or whatever, to a point where I think people would be better off reinvesting it in the space in a different way and making those live events even better. So yeah. I didn't think about that until you said it, but I think that's a good point. And I do think that there is an outsized growth in prize pools and an undersized growth in a lot of other areas of events.
Because, like, who's it for? Is it for the competitors or the audience? Like, what are they trying to drive by it? And if it's getting more people to visit Saudi, then make all flights cheaper that week, and I don't know. There's like other ways. I
For like a flight
so-
credit, like along with your
Right.
purchase of a ticket, you get a flight credit
right.
or something. I don't know.
something.
Or it has to go to the extreme, right? Like we're gonna give $1 billion to the winner. They're gonna be the first esports billionaire, right? Like it just has to be something so out there.
Yes, we need a Squid Game situation. That's what Paul is suggesting.
Their own island off the coast, like something outrageous.
You know, this region has a lot of like they always try and be the first or the biggest or this or that. So the 30 million to me felt like just a high cost to get a press release here when 10 would probably have done the trick just as well. And Lindsay, to your point, invested in some other areas. Guys, that wraps up this week's news show. You guys are amazing. This was my favorite show ever. Joni, Lindsay, Ben, Danielle, thank you so much. Can we have you guys on every week? Can we do that? Is that too much to ask? But seriously, thank you. Don't forget, guys, go check out YouGov, yougov.com/BOE. Go show Ben some love on LinkedIn. And don't forget to subscribe to Business of Esports everywhere, on YouTube, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, on TikTok, on Twitter, you name it. On every single platform, there's content everywhere, every week that you can find.
Well, and Wiggy and all the amazing things that Dell is doing.
I was just going to say, can you guys shout out? Where can people find you? Follow.
We are GetWiggy on most platforms. We're also getwiggy.com. So check us out.
I love the domain.
And most people know Dell Technologies. You might check out girlswhogame.com because that's our program that really focuses on 4th through 8th grade girls and bringing them into STEM careers through Minecraft for education.
I love it. Awesome. Getwiggy.com, girlswhogame.com. Go check those out, guys. And don't forget, future is fun. We'll see you guys next week.